We have a lot of children in here. Actually, chronologically, we have a lot of kids who are roughly, let's just do a cutoff, 14 and younger. How many of you, and you raise your hand really high, it's okay, I know you're in church, you're 14 or younger, raise your hand really high and keep it in the air. Really high, think you see it? Raise your hand really high. Okay. Are you excited that Christmas is finally here? Are you excited? Okay, 3 of you yelled, but I'm going to give you permission to do something in church that you probably haven't really gotten to do all that often. I am going to encourage you with all of the excitement and gusto and anticipation you can work up. I want you to yell your excitement that Christmas is coming in 2 days and it's coming on 3. Yell like crazy, those 14 and under. 1, 2, 3. That was not bad. 4 of you really went crazy. I enjoyed that. Now I want to show you something, those of you 14 and under. There's others as we look around that are, not 14 and under. And some of you kind of quite a bit not, and or maybe you just, lived a really hard life in middle school. I'm not really sure. But those of you that if you're able, raise your hand if you're somewhat well over 12. And if you're able, some of you have frozen shoulder, I understand. Right? And, okay, now put it down. I'm going to give you a chance that I want you to display your excitement by just yelling out how excited you are. 1, 2, 3. That just completely blew my illustration. Thanks a lot. That may work at 3, but that did not work tonight. You are excited. Let's close in prayer. That's fantastic. This time of year, there's all the songs and Pandora and the movies and all the things that we get excited about. And a few weeks ago, I happened to be at a conference in Cincinnati, and I was in a hotel called the Millennium. They had 30 floors, and I was on the 30th floor teaching a class there. And as part of this conference, we had to finish the class and hurry to go down to the general session. So several of us were waiting at the top of the hotel, the elevator, 30 floors. Hit the button, waited. Finally, the door opened, and 3 or 4 of us went in, and this hand reaches around, and a dad with his maybe 7-year-old son walk onto the elevator. And we hit, the lobby button, and the kid goes, just as the doors are shutting, the kid goes, knock, knock. And the dad goes, who's there? He said, Christmas. And the dad says, Christmas who? And the kid goes, Christmas tree, and goes to the lights and just goes, hit every floor. How excited are you now, huh? Dang kids. And so we got off at the 27th and started to, hit the button and wait. Those of you that do not know what that is an illustration of, there are probably 7 of you that do not even realize that that actually comes from a very famous Christian movie. Okay, a Christmas movie called Elf. Maybe we need to show you that clip from Elf where this kid got his knock-knock joke. Let's take a look. Hello.
Hey.
Oh, beautiful.
Looks like a Christmas tree. Sorry I can't ride with you the rest of the way up, but this is where my dad works. Well, have a good time. Oh, I forgot to give you a hug.
So after all, in so many ways, Christmas is a children's holiday, right? It's basically for kids. It's all the excitement and anticipation, and that we as adults put it on for children. Isn't that really the way it is? As our kids were growing up, we lived in Denver for 11 years, and when we had a ritual in our family where we had a 2-story home, and at the top, our kids would have to stay up there on Christmas morning, and we'd put up a curtain, a sheet, and all the kids would hang around with our 3 children, and then I would go down and I would turn on Amy Grant 8 tracks, and light the fire, and get, the coffee made and make sure everything's done and eat make sure the Santa cookies were there. And then I'd walk around and I'd get the video camera and I'd heft it onto remember those that you do this? And we'd say, okay, it looks like it's time. And Dee would tear back the curtain as our kids would come just roaring down the stairs and trample right over our yellow lab that hated Christmas on their way to the gifts around the tree. Christmas, anticipation, excitement, expectation, but not just for children. Christmas, a time that we sing and we celebrate, not just with family and friends, not just presents and parties, but there's something of expectation, perhaps, and anticipation, at least for some of us. Pastor Megan, in Advent a few weeks ago, opened the service with this prayer where she said, throughout the coming days, stir in us a readiness to receive you, an openness to know you, and the desire to respond to the reality of your presence with us. Jan Richardson wrote a really great Christmas devotional called Night Visions, and she says this: the season of Advent means there is something on the horizon, the likes of which we have never seen before. What is possible is to not see it, to miss it, to turn just as it brushes past you. And you begin to grasp what it was you missed, like Moses in the cleft of the rock, watching God's back fade in the distance. So stay, sit, linger, tarry, ponder, wait, behold, wonder. There will be time enough for running, for rushing, for worrying, for pushing, for now. Stay. Wait. Something is on the horizon. And that leads us to our text that we read during the reading, the shepherds. The shepherds, here's one vision of the shepherds, one artist's vision. If you see these, this is better than most, but most of the time when you see a picture that somebody's come up with of the shepherds, they really don't look anything like the actual shepherds at the time of Jesus' birth. They look like upper-class Norwegian medieval vacationers who are looking up at a sky of something going on. But that's not who the shepherds were. The shepherds, it was really the worst job in the world. It was kind of the bottom rung of society. It's the one thing where you really hated your life because there was nothing else that you could find a job, and you ended up being out in the wilderness at night, usually with somebody else's sheep, and your job was to stay awake and make sure you didn't lose any of them. So as they went through the mundane ordinariness of their life, these shepherds were anything but wealthy, well-dressed. These shepherds in the picture they're looking like they're having a good time with one or two sheep. And then they see the angels and they get that look on their face. Well, these shepherds were anything but expectant. They weren't anticipating the birth of Jesus. Now, they should have known better, but they didn't. Faithful Jews, they're out there in the fields, and all of a sudden this angel shows up. Luke 2:9, as you see it here. The glory of the Lord shone around them. And their first reaction, these poor, destitute shepherds, their kids were embarrassed by them, very little to live for, very little self-worth, the bottom rung of society, and then this angelic vision occurred, and they were just like Mary, terrified. Terrified, intense emotion. And in the midst of their terror, they should have known better because they carried the expectations of the Jews with us. We read that during the reading from Isaiah 40. Let's take a look at that text now. Why do you say, Israel, my way is hidden from the Lord? My cause is disregarded by my God. Do you not know? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. These shepherds should have known that God was not going to leave them to their fate, but their religious expectation was present. And this is really important this time of year for us who are somewhat over 14. Their religious expectation of the actual event, of what occurred, did not prepare them for the experience that they received. Their faith had become as dull as a well-worn knife, and they were terrified. But then the angel then said to them, "Do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will bring great joy for all the people. Today in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord. This will be a sign to you. You will find a baby wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger." You know that story. We've sung it. You've heard it over and over. We read it together tonight. And the fullness of this message, they went from sheer terror, what was happening, even though they should have known better, into this experience of deep wonder and indescribable joy, because we actually see their reaction. The next verse, verse 12, they hurried off and they found Mary and Joseph and the baby lying in a manger. What's wild about this is the swing of emotions from these ordinary, in fact, bottom rung of society people, men, when they first were just living out the dullness of their life, into the terror of the angelic visit, into the crescendo of the angelic choir, of not only the strings and the horns and the timpani, but the choir singing for all to hear. And the shepherds moved from terror to ecstasy as they took off, and that was their reaction. They ran full speed to go see this baby. And as they went to go see this baby, what one writer writes, Frederick Buechner writes, "You would think we were out of our minds. Was it day or night? Did our feet even touch the ground?" What happened to the shepherds? Did you ever think about that? What occurred that would change them from this kind of ordinary evening into sheer terror, into ecstatic delight that caused them to drop their staffs and run full speed to see the wonders that the angel had proclaimed? What a transformation. And when they saw, and when they beheld, and when they experienced for themselves the wonder of not only what the angels announced and the choir sang, but they saw the baby in Mary's arms, their lives are never the same. That's Christmas. Something similar happened to me and to Dee. Our daughter-in-law lives a few miles away from here, and she and my son, he's on staff at Irvine Presbyterian Church, and they're having a child here in April. And Isa is going to be born, God willing, in April, and we're very excited about that. But our daughter actually had our first grandchild in September. Now, I'm 37 years old, so I wasn't quite anticipating this at quite this age, but this is her picture. This is little Hallie at 3 months. Yes, exactly. Most babies are ugly, we know that. But Hallie was born. And when Hallie was born, within not that long, they had told us they wanted about an hour, and it was probably around 20 minutes that we got invited into the room, and eventually I got to hold my first grandchild. And I'm a dad. I've had 3 children myself, and those were incredible moments, as you can imagine. But this new grandchild hit me in a different way. I wasn't expecting. Katie was expecting. Jessica is expecting. We were expecting a baby. I knew we were having a baby in our extended family, but I held this child. I stared into her eyes. I counted her toes, not to make sure, 1, 2, but the wonder of it, the beauty of it, the majesty of this child. I I had two overwhelming thoughts. First is, as I held her, I had this overwhelming sense that I wasn't just holding a baby in the material world. I was literally holding the portal of heaven. The perfection, the beauty, the wonder of the experience far exceeding my expectation as I held her. And yet the second emotion that hit me as I held this precious one was that God had ripped a hole in creation and brought himself and handed his handmade creation he knit together in my daughter's womb and handed it to me as a gift as I held my granddaughter, Hallie Louise, hallelujah. And I held her and I kissed her. But I realized something. I didn't kiss her. She kissed me. This little one had given me this gift of touching the portal of heaven, of holding God's handiwork in my hand, of receiving the kiss of this precious one, which threw everything upside down. Just like our kids at Christmas when the curtain was ripped open and they tore down the stairs with anticipation, I had no idea what I was going to face until I met Allie. My friends, that's Christmas. That's Christmas. The story about me and Hallie, that's commonplace to so many, and others have great pain associated with problems that go on in those things. And I'm not saying that to say that's what Christmas is the birth of our grandchild. What I'm saying is, for me, I experienced something that I hadn't expected. The shepherds experienced something that they hadn't expected. Elf, the movie, he was going to find his dad and his home. Our children, when the curtain was ripped back, were going to go run and find the experience of the gifts. The shepherds moved to see the baby, to count the toes, to behold the one who has come. And that's the gift of Christmas. That's why we gather. That's why you play. That's why you sing. Because we've been given the gifts from heaven. God has ripped creation open, and he's not only brought a gift, he's brought the gift of himself to us. Oh, little town of Bethlehem. The hurts and fears of all the years are met in thee tonight. Good news, which will bring great joy to all the people. A son has been born to you. And it's not that we come just to celebrate the parties and the presents and the family and the food. In fact, for many, even here among us, Christmas is at best a bittersweet time, or maybe even a very painful time. You may be in the midst of a serious crisis now, or have history that makes Christmas hard for you every year. Others of you, this is your favorite season. That you love to celebrate Christmas. You love it when the children sing. You enjoy so deeply all of the trappings around it. But is it possible that we may miss the new thing happening as God hands himself into your arms this Christmas? What are you expecting Christmas morning? The hopes and fears of all the years are met in him tonight. I bring you good news of great joy that will be for all the people today. A child has been born to you. So as we sing, as we celebrate, as we enjoy the children, as we gather together, as we fist bump, as we shout and yell and the adults frankly beat the kids, let us never forget, let us not miss the kiss of heaven in the babe named Jesus Christ. Receive his kiss. Welcome his kiss, for the hopes and fears of all the years are met in him